Did Arcade Sports Bowling give the CD32 the boost it needed? We'll find out on Amigos, Everything Amiga. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about Arcade Sports Bowling.
Kingpin Arcade Sports Bowling. Don't forget that part.
Kingpin. Aaron, what is it with America's love affair with bowling? Why is it still continually popular?
It's not. Our love affair with bowling peaked in like the 1970s or 60s, and now it's a steady downhill decline. And I don't know what it is. I guess people just got tired of it. I mean, there are still bowling alleys. You can still bowl, but I mean, they are not as nearly as plentiful as when I was a kid. I would go. I mean, just within I don't know, 20 minutes of the house. Any time in history, there would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 bowling alleys. And now, I mean, really, you have to go a pretty good chunk to get to the bowling alley. And their bowling alleys aren't as fun as they used to be, in my opinion. But, I mean, they did make it a lot easier to score and stuff. But when I was a kid, bowling was a big deal. Everyone was in leagues. I mean, was that still going on when you were growing up, league bowling?
My parents were in a bowling league when I was very, very young, but it didn't last long. I guess you're right. Bowling has declined. It has dwindled in popularity. But when, we're both not that old comparatively. And we both like to go out to the bowling alley every once in a while. I'd say once or twice a year we head out that way.
Yeah.
What brings us back? What brings you back to bowling?
I enjoy bowling. I would bowl more. Well, I mean, now my knee is almost fully recovered, so I would feel like okay getting back at. Bowling is the everyman sport, but even if you have a real crummy injury, it can hose you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fun. It's a fun sport that anybody can play, and anyone can have a good game at any time. You know, you're gonna have mostly bad games, but it's always fun to like beat your buddies. You know, so it's a lot of fun. It's one of those sports. It's sort of like my phone ringing. It's sort of like tennis or something where everyone can go out there and give it a shot. You're not necessarily going to do that well.
Bowling is comparable to tennis. I'm going to draw the line there.
Well, I mean, when I say that, I mean it's a sport where you can just go out. You could walk down the street to a tennis court and give it a shot. You may suck, but you could do it. You know what, that pickleball or whatever that's called? That's even more like bowling. Anyone can do it. Whereas, baseball or football or hockey, something like that, requires a lot more effort. You know, I'm sure Europe has a lot more, like the pub games is at a pub table, darts.
There's special pub games bowling styles, where they use the little ball and the little pins, and there's duck pin bowling. But to me, bowling is the ultimate social activity. And I'll tell you why. Number one.
Ultimate?
Yeah, number one. Because it gives you something to do, okay? But you don't have to pay too much attention, especially in this day and age with automatic scoring, okay?
That's true. It was a lot harder when you had to keep your own score.
Number two, you can bring a ton of people to the bowling alley and everybody can still have fun. Because no matter how many people you bring, you just sort of break it down and maybe you have like 5 or 6 people on a lane. Everybody's still within talking distance. You can walk back and forth when it's not your turn and still, you can socialize with a big amount of people. Now, of course, it's probably best with about 10 people. But let's be honest, neither of us has more than 10 friends. So it's perfect.
Speak for yourself.
Number three. It's indoors. It's not weather dependent, unlike most sports where, if you're going out to play tennis and it's raining, you're going to have a bad time. Okay.
Do you think there's any outdoor bowling anywhere?
Oh, yeah. There's road bowling. There's a big road bowling championship in Charleston every year as part of the Celtic Games.
Well, I guess maybe I'm thinking of something that doesn't exist. I mean, just like a bowling alley, but it's outside. I mean, with like the automatic pin setter.
It would be difficult. It would be difficult to make that happen.
That would be cool. I'd like to see that, man.
Maybe it could be a almost like a retractable dome situation. Okay, I can't remember what number I'm on now, but other things that are cool about bowling. Awesome shoes. What other sport can you rent your shoes right from the get-go? None other sport.
That's a drawback
Okay.
to me because
Oh man,
you're
I love a
renting
good pair of
shoes.
bowling shoes.
Would you rip
Okay.
pants? You know what I'm saying?
Now this is the best thing about bowling is that you completely disregard any rules or guideposts about sanitation that you've ever heard in your life. Because what you do is you stick the old 3 fingers into the ball, right? The ball that's never been cleaned since the dawn of time. Then as soon as you bowl, you're right back to your chair, right down to the chili cheese fries. Stuff a bunch in your mouth. Bam.
God, I never thought of that. That's a good. I never thought about that. They spray some crud in there. Surely
Listen,
that
man,
kills
that
the
crud's
germs.
not doing any good.
It's not like you're sweaty when you're bowling. Oh.
Of course not. It's not like they have a fan there to dry the sweat off your hand in between bowls.
You know, this is all a perfect ad for computer bowling. It's like you're leading into something, but I can't tell what.
So, if you like hanging out with your buddies, eating cheese fries, being indoors, and the thrills, chills, and spills of the bowling experience, maybe you should try Kingpin Arcade Sports Bowling.
Funky. That's super funky, Boat. I think, anyway. I thought it was pretty nice little tune there.
Kingpin Arcade Sports Bowling. Tell us about it, Aaron.
So, I'd never heard of this, which is surprising. I take that back. I had heard about it, but only recently for a completely unrelated reason, which I'll get into. This is Kingpin Arcade Sports Series Bowling, to be precise. This one came from our good friends at Team 17, your favorites, Boat.
Team 17 does good stuff.
Published in 95 for the Amiga. Now, you got 2 flavors of this for the Amiga. You got your disc-based version, right? And then you got your CD-based version. Now, you notice I didn't say CD32 because I looked in the instructions. Yes, I read the instructions for this bowling game, and they mentioned that this game will work great on your CD32 or your third-party CD-based Amiga 1200. They also mentioned that.
Sure.
So you could play this on 1200 if you were one of the rare people that had the third-party CD.
Yeah. I mean, how many do you think those are out there? A dozen? 2 dozen?
Now there's. Well, I mean, who knows now? It's crazy time. But there was also a DOS version of this Boat. Believe it or not, I looked at it. It's very close. It was also released in 95. This was produced by Martin Brown, who pretty much produced all the Team 17 stuff. Coded by Pieter Opdam. Now listen to Pieter's. There's a theme here on some of these. He did Ball Raider. He did Bouncer. He did Ice Ball. He did Power Ball. And then he did a few other things.
He's a ballsy developer.
He's a ballsy guy. He also did a game called Winter Camp, which you need to look into, Boat.
Okay.
That sounds like it's right up our alley. The graphics, Barry S. Armstrong, who, guess what he did? He was the graphic guy for a little game called Pushover, which we both loved.
I love Pushover.
Yeah, and which explains why the graphics are so tight. He also did Time Runner. The music on this, the ever-present, the Team 17 stalwarts, all-around great guy, Alistair Brimble, who we, of course, his accolades go far and wide through your Agony, your Alien Breeds, your Body Blows, your Super Frogs, tons of stuff, tons of Team 17 stuff. He also was responsible for sound effects on this. This may also change your opinion. This was a budgety type title that went for £13, £12.99 to be precise.
Okay.
When this came, now that price was for the disc version. The CD32 version, no doubt, was a few extra bucks.
I'm sure it was a full price title. I'm sure.
From what I've read, the only real differences in this were the controller, which I will say I played with the CD32 controls, and you got all the controls on your joystick, which is nice. And then you also got some sound effects, some music, and some better voice samples. That's the way it was. It's funny because I played I played 2 different versions of this, and they both pretty much seemed the same, and neither one of them had the CD sound. I had to go and look for the CD sound to see what it sounded like, and get the ambient sound that came with it. So, again, this was Team 17 joint, and this game gives you the bowling experience, I guess is the best way to put it. It's like going to a really boring bowling alley, I guess would be the best way. I'm trying to be nice here.
Well, here's the thing. It's like going to a bowling alley before all of the creature comforts were installed. So, there's no screens above the alleys telling you what your score is. There's not even the old overhead projectors like they had when I was a kid.
Well, when they give you the in between rolls thing, it looks very similar to the archaic graphics you would get like in the early 90s and late 80s that would be on the bowling screen. You know what I mean?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But there's, remember eventually you'd get like little animations, like they're like there'd be a ball, like he'd be missing a pin, and it'd be like, whoa,
it's very sort of like exploding scoreboard at a baseball game type thing. Yeah,
but they don't have. This has none of that.
No.
So all the charm and joy that they pretty much don't. They didn't include that. This is the straight bowling experience. Now, you can play up to 6 players, and you can pick your opponent. So you can have 3 humans and 3 computer players, or any combination of humans and computer players. You get various modes on this. Let's talk about the modes real quick, Boat. I mean, let's just to briefly get into how this game comes up. It comes up with a nice screen with some bowling stuff on it. There's a song if you have that version, and then you go right to the menu. There's no animated bowlers. There's no one dancing. There's no special demo-y type intro. It's pretty much plain Jane, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this is a no frills endeavor in terms of the menu system on this game.
Yeah, and so it comes up, and it's funny. The menu system sort of looks like if this game reported to a bowling alley, the menu system would fit right in. It's kind of blue with white light letters. It's totally nondescript. So you get several options. So your options are to you could just bowl, straight bowling alley. You could also, there's a practice mode where you just play 10 rounds, and then that's it. It's just practice. Then they've got a what they call like a spare challenge, where they will drop a certain set of pins that you have to knock down in 3 tries. And if you do that, you could continue. It's the spare challenge. So it's sort of like a something to practice picking up spares, or if you're good at picking up spares, something to try to set a high score on. And then you also have the ability to make a bowler. I mean, it's
well.
I mean, you basically change
this
the name.
This is definitely not Skyrim character creation here.
You can first of all, Boat, none of these guys are wearing a shirt as good as the one you're wearing tonight with the blue and white. These guys have basically a one colored shirt with a collar. When you make your own guy, you can make. By the way, you don't see the guy when you're making him. It's all text based, and you also there are no faces or hairstyles, none of that. And all you pick is if he's left or right-handed, the weight of the ball, what your name is, and what your sex is, if you're male or female. That's it. Those are your options, and your shirt color. So once you've got all that set up, and then you can load and save your character after that. And I will say it does track your performance through the game, which is nice. I mean, I guess if you're going to play a lot of this, you also have computer players that are like built into the game. You can load them off disc. So, and I guess there's
the first character's name is just called Team 17. So.
Yeah. I picked CPU 1. That was my main rival in these games. So, anything you want to discuss about the menus or the options that I didn't?
I do like the fact that they let you choose your shirt color. I mean, they didn't have to do that.
Well, wow,
this is horrible.
You're gonna put them over for that?
No, that was my lead into the burial. This game, the menu system is really, really poor. When you compare it to a game like PGA Tour Golf or Euro Challenge, whatever, remember the golf game that we played where all of the setup was done from the pro shop?
Yeah.
So, like, if you wanted to pick your golfer, you went over to the registration table and filled out a thing, or if you wanted to choose what clothes they were wearing, you grab something off the rack. It would have been nothing for them to recreate a shoe rental table, and have that in the background. Have somebody there that maybe is a little wisecracky. You click on. This is one of these things. I always think about a game like Skate or Die too, where they give you all of the options are there, but then as you hover your mouse or you control around the screen, you touch different things and there's little things that pop up that are funny or whatever. This would have been a perfect chance for you to add some personality to your game, because I realize bowling is not it's not an interactive game. Bowling, even when played competitively, is like golf. It's a solo sport. You're only facing off against yourself, basically. So where can you easily add a little bit of personality, a little bit of interpersonal communication between you and the computer? It's all in the setup screen. And there's none of that in this game.
Let me tell you, that's a good call. This game desperately needs some panache. The menu screen is utilitarian as possible. It works. It's serviceable. It's easy to understand. But there's so much they could have done right there. There's so much they could have done. Now, again, this is a cheaper release, that's one of the areas it shows. But the problem with a game like this, yes, it's a cheaper release, but these games need a game like bowling needs more attention than most games, because bowling, just by the actual sport of bowling is very repetitive. It's not like baseball or football or soccer, where there's a lot of different things that can happen. You're going to be looking at the same screen over and over and over, doing effectively the same thing over and over and over. You need all the help you can get to make it interesting. You need a lot more than what they put into this, which is effectively nothing. If you get, there's a background, I think it's the CD version only, there's a sort of an audio track that plays in the background with like ambience from a bowling alley, and occasionally there'll be a funny announcement. But aside from that, that's pretty much all there is in terms of when you get a strike or a spare, it just shows you. There's a real lame crowd, like hardball circa 1986 sort of crowd reaction. But what is that? And I don't see a crowd. Could you show the bowler celebrating? Could you show him when he gets mad? Like when you play Neo Turf Masters, when you fail, your guy gets mad, he breaks his club. It's just a still photo that they pan across. It wouldn't take any extra, action to have it, but it means something because it shows something. You're getting some kind of atmosphere.
Pixels of Dawn in the chat brings up a good point that I didn't think of before. But almost everything in this game is set up as if you're interacting with the old bowling computer. That, when you sit down at your lane and you sit in front of the screen, and it's a very minimalist interface where you punch in your name, everything is that white text on a dark background. And I think he's right. I think that is what they were going for, the ultra realistic sort of presentation of both the computer and also the setup. That's the wrong choice.
It's not to mention
video games are meant to elevate reality, because reality kind of sucks. Okay?
To me, it's a cop out.
Well,
frankly,
it is. It's a way that they could say, well, we set this up to make it look just like a real bowling alley. That who wants that? Nobody wants that.
One would wonder, again, since this got a low end release, maybe they're just like, this is the amount of effort you get for this amount of money. And the funny thing is, and let's go ahead and talk about the actual gameplay. So when you're presented with a bowling alley, it looks like any other lane, just lanes around your lane, your bowler's there. He or she are well represented. They look like a bowler. You don't ever see anyone's face in the whole game, but you do see the back of the bowlers, and they move pretty well, and everything looks nice. I will say the actual bowling section looks pretty good, and it zooms in. You get some pin action, and then in between every roll, they show you statistics like which pins are left. I wish there was a way, by the way, to turn that off I like having it, but I don't necessarily want it all the time in between every roll. I would like to have an option where it just went to the next roll. I wanted to get on with it. You know what I mean? To control this game, you use your joystick or and really what you really would want to use is the CD32 controller, in my opinion. But what you do is you've got a bowler behind the line. You can move him left or right to kind of put him in the position where you want him. And then you've got the classic meter on the side. Now, at any point in this game, you can change your ball weight from all the way from I believe 16 pounds is the highest down to 8 pounds, I believe, is the lowest. And even in between frames you could do it. But you can change your size of your ball, and then there's a meter that you set before you roll, and it's not like golf or something. You just set this by moving up and down, and this meter controls how powerful your shot is going to be. Okay, so if you put it way up, or you can put it way down, so you can pick your ball weight, you can pick how hard you throw. Once you've made all these decisions, you hit the button, and your guy will take off towards the line and bowl the ball. Now, before you do that, there's a little arrow that floats around on the actual bowling alley. Depending on how hard you're going to throw the ball and the weight of the ball you're throwing, it will vary the speed of that little arrow. That's the key to the game. You've got to put that arrow where you want it on the alley, and when you hit your button, wherever that arrow is at, you will throw the ball at exactly that spot. Now, one key element to this, and when you play this the first time, you may not even pay attention to it. But before the game, they will give you the condition of the alley. They'll say the alley has just been waxed, and the balls are leaning to the left.
Yeah, I like that a lot. To me, that was the best part of the game.
Well, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it does add a complete variance to every game because of that change, but it makes it really. I've never been to an actual alley where that plays that much. In this game, that plays a major effect on your roll. I mean, it plays a major effect.
Neither one of us is a good enough bowler to know if any of that stuff matters.
Well, I mean, I've bowled, and I've never seen the ball consistently go like one way like that. I mean, in this, if you bowl the same every time, it goes that way. But I mean, it's something. It's a variance because this game doesn't really feature the ability to like throw real big hooking ball like the real top bowlers do. Once you let the ball go, you've got what the manual calls the after touch, which is funny because the first time I played this, I didn't know there was any after touch. Did you know about the after touch?
I read the docs before I played.
Yeah. So the after touch, your opinion on the after touch? Did you see it make a lot of?
It works.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make that thing spin just like when you're playing a baseball game.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of play. I don't know if it's okay. It's still not like throwing a proper. Most bowling games give you the ability to like do a real massive, to line up a hook. You know what I mean? Like a real massive one.
The way that this game handles that is that they still let you do it. If it's all about the power. If you have a lot of power. And then the power is directly connected to the aftertouch. So if you max out your power and then put aftertouch, you'll throw a wicked hook.
If you could get your power maxed out and throw something resembling a straight ball, I had a heck of a time.
I mean, that's the challenge of the game.
So basically that's the game. Rinse and repeat. You'll go through all 10 frames, and depending on what game you're playing, whether you're playing against a computer, playing by yourself, or playing there's a doubles and a triples mode where you can have like a little team action. That's the game. In between every roll, they tell you what pins are left and what they are, if it's a 7-10 split or whatever, and then you roll again. I mean, am I missing anything, Bode? I think that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that accurately simulates a round of 10 frames of bowling. I mean, and you can play by yourself. You can play with a computer-controlled opponent. You can play with some real friends, or you can do the split challenge. Yeah, that's the game.
That's it. It's funny. The magazines thought this was a very, very, very robust array of bowling options. And it's funny because I don't know what else you'd put in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I felt like it was
doing monkey ball craziness. Then there's not much else that you can put in a game like this.
Yeah.
I just think Duncan in the chat talked about how if they would have added extra stuff, it might have pushed it out of budget range. I mean, maybe, but to me, they've already pushed this game out of budget range because it's a good game. I mean, this game, the play control, the animation of the pins, the animation of your guy, I mean, all that stuff is good. It's beyond sort of budget range. Paying your artist to make a shoe counter and livening up your menu system a little bit, I don't think is going to make a big difference to the bottom line here. It's just a question of whether they cared enough to add it or not. To me, you look at the Amiga, of course, you've always got to look at it within the context of when it was released. Okay, so this is a 1995 release. We're at the end of the line. Everybody knew it was the end of the line. But if this was, say, a 1992 release, there were still no bowling games for the Amiga. And if Team 17 would have come along and said, hey, we're going to make a bowling game for the Amiga, there's no competition. Why don't we actually sort of make a game that we'd be proud of? Of course, it's a double-edged sword. If there's no competition, there's no competition. You can make a game as bad as you want. It'll still probably sell because statistically speaking, there are bowling fans that own Amiga computers. So I don't know what you do.
I noticed in the notes, just for the people that might be interested in this, the guys at Team 17 mentioned that the pins on this were ray traced and rendered on a Pentium PC. In nearly 400 positions, so they could accurately display the action.
It's very impressive.
The pins were modeled by Barry on Imagine on his Amiga 4000, and then converted into 3D studio files for rendering. The audio is all real digitized sound effects from a bowling alley. So they did do that. There was something, but I hate to sit here and agree with you over and over, but you're not wrong. And there's a few other things I don't like in this. The computer, I loaded up several different opponents, and I never saw the computer have an open frame one time. Like, this guy's like a monster. Now, he might not strike every time, but he spares. Every time.
Oh, so it's either a strike or a spare for the.
So you had the same experience. Did you have? Did you load up multiple guys to?
I will say that I had so little impetus to do that. Like, if they would have made these people look different. Then I would have had, but I didn't. I basically, I chose a computer player, and I just figured maybe I should have, maybe they are all wildly different. But to me, that would be something. To me, that would be something that you control with the difficulty level rather than the player.
Yeah, they're not wildly different at all. I mean, you've got guys and girls, and they've got different shirt colors. That's it. If you look at a game, Bo, do you remember when we were doing? I think you were still on the show when we did bowling on. ARG Presents on the Neo Geo. Were you still on the show back then?
No,
Neo Geo has a bowling game that would have been about the same time frame, but it's exactly the opposite of this. It's got character to beat the band. It's got tons of character. It's still not the best game ever played, but that's the one thing I wish this game had. It's funny when they nail the basics and then they forget about everything else. And you mentioned, if they're trying to go for the aesthetic of a bowling computer or whatever, those sucked back then. We don't, like you said, we want something better now. And I think they missed the opportunity to have some, you don't have to have even character making, but something a little different. Something, like you said, the shoe count. We remember that game we played, that flight simulator where you get to go in that office and tool around. Stuff like that. That's all we ask.
That's all you need.
Some mouse control. We've got them. Everyone's got a mouse. Wouldn't that be an interesting thing?
Not if you had a CD32, you didn't.
Well, you're right, but you could.
I've never played a bowling game with mouse control I thought was any good.
Oh, I like having the mouse. I think it's fun, But that they didn't do that either. Just a few tidbits I thought were amusing. So I mentioned that I had heard of this game, but not in the context of the Amiga. So you ever heard of this thing called the Evercade?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, So the Evercade is it's a series of devices now, but they make little compilations for it.
It's a little handheld or TV console.
Yeah,
that
they
takes
made
little cartridges.
They made a Team 17 collection, and this was on it. And from everyone that I saw that played it, they didn't like it that much on the time there. And it's funny because I watched
the words "rip-off" might have been included in those reviews.
I watched a lot of footage. Well, not a lot, but some of the footage from the Evercade version, and it was just like the version I put on the Amiga. It was totally silent except for the bowling sounds. So I don't know. I guess they didn't get the coolest sounds. Something else you might find amusing. Boat. So I think we've touched this before, but it came up, and this game sort of was named in it. So Team 17 had a problem with the Amiga Power magazine. All right.
Yeah. All right. I've heard that.
And so here, from what I could tell, okay, Amiga Power had this policy to give 50% score to an average game instead of 73%. As an average, which I guess some magazines did that as a nod to studios, like, well, that way you get a little bit of a bump, with your score. Team 17
that whole thing is so ridiculous because it's not as if there was a Metacritic back then.
Well, Team 17
you got
hated
the magazine
this.
you got.
And so they basically wouldn't let Amiga Power even review their stuff there towards the end. They hated them so much, but they started putting references to Amiga Power in their games. So in arcade, now this is from Moby here, but I saw this a couple places. Computer players at the easiest difficulty setting in Amiga Pool, F-17 Challenge, and Kingpin Arcade Sports Bowling were named after the Amiga Power staff members, just to belittle them, if you can believe that. That's pretty petty.
Listen, this is sort of like the version of our YouTube retro internet drama that goes on constantly. This was like the 90s version of that.
So get this. 2 of the Amiga Power writers claimed that a Team 17 staff member made allegations of bribery and corruption about Amiga Power in another magazine called Amiga Concept. Also, Team 17 would not give review copies to Amiga Power, and when they reviewed this game, they reviewed Kingpin Bowling, and they also reviewed a game called ATR. We played that, All Terrain Racing. Team 17 filed a libel action against the magazine, demanding that they stop lying about their games. And of course, I had to look up the Amiga Power review, and I'll just read you the headline of the review. Strike this game off your shopping list. That's what it's 47%, which I had to laugh at that. I did look at some other reviews, but the Lemon People gave this a 7 and gave the CD32 version 7.45. Lore scored the disc version 74 and the CD version 77. Most of the magazines had this somewhere in the 70s. Amiga Action gave it an 84. Amiga Computing gave it an 88. Of course, Amiga Format gave it a 67. And, of course, Amiga Power gave it a 47. And the One gave it a 78. Average magazine rating a 74% vote, which, I mean, what do you think about 74? How's that feel for you?
It's like, what are you comparing this against? There's no other bowling games on the Amiga.
It is the best bowling game on the Amiga.
To me, this is 100.
That's the Boat scoring system? My God, the people over at T17 would love you, Boat.
Hey, listen, I'm available for purchase.
You're on the take, that's for sure. I looked this up on eBay. I was interested to see what this go for. So get this. I found complete in-box CD32 versions, which you don't see that often. These are the people that, these are the boxes that contain also the jewel case and the CD, so it's the full Monty there. Mm-hmm. I saw $76, $61 for those. I saw one that was just the disc and the case going for $66, their best offer. I saw the disc version of this, which confirms that it did exist, but because I was kind of like you. I'm like, what am I playing here? The disc version of this was going for $16 or best offer, and $61 depending on your where you're at. So that's the long and short of it. Boat. Any parting thoughts on the old Kingpin?
If you want to go bowling, just go bowling.
Fair enough.
Are you a sketchy tech? Do you have the right tools for the job? Have there been incidents? Next time, don't try to fix it yourself. Send your broken Amiga to Retro Rewind. Get a full diagnostic, a reasonable estimate, and the peace of mind knowing that your machine is in the hands of real technicians with decades of experience and cutting-edge repair equipment. Save 10% off your repair with the promo code Amigos10. Thank you to RetroRewind.ca for supporting this episode.
Amiga News.
Gamble Train.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Aaron. You know, we've been off for a month. There's been a lot going on in the old world of Amiga. So everybody that's listening, settle in and get ready for an Amiga News Roundup to beat the band. We start with Doug's latest video, Amiga 4000 as a daily driver. Now, Aaron, I've been waiting because this video has been out for a while. I've been waiting to talk to you about this. Yeah. Because there's a trend in retro computing YouTubers where they take their favorite machine, you know, whether it's an Atari or an Amiga or an old Mac, and they say, for a week or a month, I'm going to make this my daily driver.
Yeah.
Have you ever been tempted to do that with the old, say, I don't know, MSX or Coco?
God, no. That's insane. I can't do it. No, I don't think there's a TRS-80 version of OBS that I can use. You know, I mean, listen, I do most of my art on 3D Paint, so maybe there may be something better than that on some of these machines, but that's about it. Doug, on the other hand, of course, we know that there are guys like Doug who are completely out of their mind, taking leave of their good senses, and Doug is one of them. This video is him. You know, it's funny because Chris Edwards also is sort of like fiddling with Amigas and doing some real advanced stuff with them this month. And both these guys run into trouble after trouble, nonstop issues. And I'm always thinking to myself, you've got to be no one's questioning the passion of these men.
No,
let's put it that way. They're completely unquestionable. And so in this, Doug is trying to figure out why he's having some hardware issues with Intellivision MK3. It's funny. I just saw it because this is a series, the Amiga 4000 is a daily driver, and I just saw a tweet from Doug just like yesterday where he was like talking about running Windows on his Amiga, and somehow if I read the tweet right, as crazy as this sounds, he's got some sort of remote desktop gimmick working on the Amiga. Okay. Now, I don't know if he's doing something cute, like just running the video for the computer in.
Right.
I don't know if that counts as using your Amiga as a daily driver.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You know, I watched this.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. And
this is right up not your alley.
And he's like, okay. So I'm going to do everything. He's like, first things up, word processing. And then he talks about how this Final Write or whatever he's using, it can output rich text files to a PC. Yeah. So at some point, he's going to have to use the PC anyway, which defeats the whole purpose of this in my eyes. To me, if you're going to make a claim that I'm going to use the Amiga 4000 as a daily driver, that means I'm not going to use my PC this whole time period. I'm going to use my Amiga 4000. If all you're doing is creating files on your Amiga and then just bringing them over to your PC to actually do functional work with them, that's not what a daily driver is. It's like saying my daily driver is a Toyota Corolla, but it stays in my garage and I pull it out of the driveway and then I get out of it and then I take my Mercedes to work.
What a deal. I wish I could do that. I mean, I think there are going to be some corners cut. I mean, it's you've got to look at this in the spirit of the way it's presented, where he's going to try to do modern things on his classic Amiga 4000. And in that vein, I'm interested to see what he comes up with. This is a lot like the old YouTube gimmick. Remember that, where you download the video and stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of kind of in the spirit of that. Plus, this is such a wacky
what you
concept.
mean it's a grift?
Well, listen, it got me to watch because I was like, I got to see this.
Listen, this is YouTube gold right here.
Yeah.
I wish I'd come up with this idea. This sounds great.
You can do all your crap on the 1000. See how that goes. But yeah, I've enjoyed this. Doug, I'm always amused by his antics, and he's up to his usual antics here. I can't wait for the next couple videos because they're going to be the money videos.
I am looking forward to seeing what he does next.
And that's what he does.
The thing about Doug is he's a lot like Rob Flacco Hera. Whatever he puts out on YouTube, I end up watching, and at the end of it, I'm like, man, I was entertained. So
yeah,
good on you, Doug.
He's wacky. He's a wacky character.
All right, next up, it's Amiga Addict issue 31, Aaron. Big
Holy
31 smokes. From the folks at Amiga. The Amiga goes to war.
Oh, yes.
Okay. This is the July issue. I believe it's going to be going on sale at the end of July. I'm not really sure how it works. Oh, it says, available for pre-order shipping from 25th July 2024 onwards. They have exclusive interviews with John Cutter from CinemaWare.
Oh.
Some guy from SSI. What is
Hold
SSI?
on a second. John
is that some
Cutter.
Sort of weird Amiga thing?
SSI. That's the. Well, I mean, the SSI it stands for simulation, something. You put me on the spot here, but they're on a bunch of games. But listen, let's get back to this John Cutter
Sounds
thing.
dumb.
That guy never talks to nobody.
A review of
Hold on a
Final
second.
Rider 7.0. Oh, listen to this. Speaking of Amiga Power, Amiga Power's launch editor comes in and talks about the golden era of Amiga magazines. That's worth price of purchase right there, just so you can get the inside story of all the Team 17 stuff. I bet he's going to go into all that. Listen, if you are a fan of the Amiga, you need to be subscribed to Amiga Addict. I mean, that's all there is to it. It is by far the best place to get current and past reviews of Amiga games, new stuff coming out, and the writing, unlike other Amiga periodicals, is all done in English natively, so there's no weird translations, and all the writers are actual real writers, not just guys off the street, except for that one time where they let me write. So this is Amiga Addict, and you need to get it right now.
You buried the lead there a little bit, which was an interview with John Cutter. This guy, you never hear from this guy. Like, I never hear from him. Wow. And he was one of the big wheels over at CinemaWare. So he's a legendary guy. So that's right there. That's worth the price of your magazine right there. That's dandy. That's a big get right there.
Coming up next, Aaron. This is a game that I'd never heard of, but an aged fellow such as yourself surely played this in the arcades when he was in his mid-teens. This is King and Balloon, Aaron. Tell us about your experience with King and Balloon.
Well, I've never played King and Balloon. I'll be honest with you.
What?
I don't think I've ever played King and Balloon. Let me have a look at it here.
So this comes to us from Indie Retro News. This is another new arcade port for the Amiga by RMJ and JoJo. It's a 1-to-1 arcade port of this 1980 Namco release. So this is one of these Namco releases that was sort of got lost to the mists of time. Kind of is weird. It kind of has sort of a Satan's Hollow look to it in terms of you're going across. It's like a vertical shooter, but you've got a bridge. But it's not like Satan's Hollow at all. There's a Space Invaders thing going on. There's a little bit of Galaga mixed in. But it's interesting.
It looks pretty good.
You've got these descending ships that are falling down. Or I'm sorry, these descending balloons, and the balloons, if they get past your archers, you've got 2 archers that are firing a single weapon, and they can pick up the king, and if the king gets up to the top of the screen, you lose a life. It's a really interesting game mechanic. It's sort of like in Galaga where your ship gets captured and you've got to shoot it, but this time it's a king and there's balloons. So interesting, an interesting game. I'll be looking forward to checking this one out.
This looks pretty interesting. You're right. This looks like the kind of game we'd get into, Boat. It's got our kind of crap. So, listen, we know this guy does the good stuff, too. So that's dandy.
Next up, Aaron, this is another new game for the Amiga. It was originally an ST platformer. I included it on here, even though it is still in its development phase, because it looks like one of your favorite games for the Amiga, Walker. You've got a 2-legged mech-like creature that is running and gunning around, Aaron. This is, I guess this was a cover disc game. and it's being converted to the Amiga by June 06. It's described on Indie Retro News as a decent run and gun platformer. I always love that praise. Yeah, with Metroidous elements. I know you're not a big Metroid guy, but what do you think as you're watching the footage of this thing? Does this scratch that Walker itch for you?
No, not at all. It doesn't look like any. I mean, the guy looks like the Walker, but I mean, clearly this is a jump around and shoot stuff game. So it doesn't have the same. Then what gets me with Walker is the controls. With all that said, though, this looks pretty good. What they call it, decent or whatever. It looks at least decent. It doesn't look bad at all. I mean, they need to hype this stuff better. You gotta listen. We much more hype. This looks pretty good. And I'm assuming this is a freebie, so hey, good deal.
Yeah,
and you can get it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So check that out, Droid for the Commodore Amiga.
Yeah.
Next up, Aaron. This is listen, JOTD. He's back again.
Yeah.
He is converting this time Galaga, what some people consider to be the all-time most classic vertical shooter.
Yeah. Unless you're Pistol Gaiden, they hate it.
It's been a long time coming to come make its way to the Amiga. Of course, we had Deluxe Galaga for a long time, but the real deal is here, and looks like that it has been released on itch, runs perfectly at 50 frames per second, and it says that you can also run it at 17 frames per second if you're running it on a plain Jane A500. So yeah, but if you've got a fast memory equipped Amiga, it'll run at 50 frames per second, fully playable with sound, all bugs fixed. So I'm definitely going to be checking this out. We've got a lot. Listen, you know how we feel about arcade ports. We continue to live in the golden age, man.
Yeah, you may not know this, but I think you do. I'm a pretty good hand at the old Galaga.
I've seen you play. You're quite
I learned
good.
at the feet of the master, which is the Chud.
The Chud,
he's the King Dong of Galaga, right? And trust me, if he doesn't get 300K, it's a disappointing game for the King. But I've picked up a few pointers from the guy, and I'm going to give this a shot. And I can tell I'll be a lot like Alcon. I'll be able to tell right away if they nailed it or not. So I'm looking forward to giving this a whirl. But it looks on the surface, it looks good, and the track record is right there. So I'm sure it's solid.
Oh yeah. Now, Aaron, this next story I've included not so much because of the game itself, but because of how it was sort of resurrected. This is a game called Double Ball. And this was a public domain game that was released in 1992. It has been found and preserved by the Polish Amiga Floppy Preservation Group. Now, I wasn't aware that this organization existed, but I know that there are groups that are like this that exist for the Atari 8-bits, where basically, their mission in life is they want to acquire all of the floppies that are just sort of like not commercially released and archive them, because a lot of times these were people's personal games. They were games that they coded themselves but never did anything with, or they were games that were released into the public domain that once public domain archives go away, these games tend to get lost. So yeah, I am fully in favor of the efforts that these guys put in. Being somewhat of an archivist myself, I love the fact that there are groups of these people that are meticulously scanning through these discs and finding gems like this. It's so cool. What do you think, Aaron?
I think it's dandy. I mean, this looks okay too. I mean, Brett would hate it, but he is. But I like this preservation society. The Polish know how to get it done, brother.
They do.
I'm not terribly surprised that they're the ones that have this group. Maybe they're not the only ones, but it's nice to know they're out there. And I think they've done good work here. I mean, this looks like a pretty decent little Arkanoid clone too. So well done, boys.
Yeah,
they're hardware geniuses. They're software geniuses. They do it all, Bode. Make a mean brew as well.
All right, Aaron, coming up next, here's a project after your own heart, the Cthulhu Project, an upcoming dungeon crawler for the Amiga. Aaron, we might have covered this before, but I don't remember, because it says that I think that Neil at Indie Retro News has written about this before, but I don't remember anything about it. Do you remember seeing this before?
Well, it's funny. Everything is a Cthulhu deal. So, I mean, I'm going to have to look at it here. Oh, God, that doesn't help, because it's It's got that official sort of screen that you can't tell what it is. I mean, I don't know, but is this out now or it's coming soon? Is that the plan?
It's currently work in progress. But it looks like, I mean, this is it's your typical dungeon crawler, one frame at a time style interface, but it is more of a fully developed role-playing game in that there's NPCs, there's items. It's more to do than just, wandering around killing or being killed. So
yeah,
if this is the sort of game that you like to play and you're a fan of the Lovecraft mythos, which I just finished a book on the history of the Lovecraft mythos that was quite good by Lynn Carter. This could be right up your alley. For me, this is down as far the alley as I want it to go, and I'm turned around running in the opposite direction.
You hate that alley, don't you?
I do.
Hate that
I hate
alley.
that
But
alley.
hey, listen. Keep the Cthulhu coming. It's funny. All these years that like me and like 6 other people talked about H.P. Lovecraft, and now everyone's talking about him all the time. It's amazing. It's good.
It's amazing how you used to like something and nobody else liked it, but now everybody likes
that's
it,
not
and
true.
now you're mad.
No, I'm not mad. I'm happy. And also, I found out about it. Guess where? The first time I ever heard about H.P. Lovecraft was I saw a guy wearing a T-shirt that was a Cthulhu T-shirt. I was like, "What the heck's that?" And bam, the doors of my mind were open, Bo.
I think you would like this book that I just read. It's really interesting about how everything was almost lost. We're going to go off script because I don't care. When Lovecraft died, there was one guy that was like, "Hey, we should publish all this guy's works," because he was famous from Weird Tales, famous in quotes. I mean, to a small selection of people, and he was well liked. But they were like, man, all this stuff is going to go away. Plus, there were all these manuscripts that had never been published because Weird Tales refused to publish tons of his stuff till after he died and he became famous. And but it was one guy, and then he shopped this book around, the collected works of H.P. Lovecraft. He shopped it around to all these publishers. Nobody wanted it, so he formed Arkham House Publishing to publish this collection of books. And if he hadn't done that, then Lovecraft would have probably been a whole lot more obscure than he is now. It's pretty incredible.
If you think, I'm sure it's in the book, but HP was a well-known editor, and
Yes.
and also he was a prolific correspondent.
Yes.
To the nth degree, and also he was relied upon by fellow authors to give them, like, what'd you think? He'd give them the advice. But he was he had mental problems. He had issues. He had money problems, like his whole life. And it's funny
the
that
whole
someone
thing was that he never saw himself as an author. He always viewed himself as a gentleman that just dabbled in letters for fun. Meanwhile, he was eating beans out of a can. So.
Yeah. That's the way I consider myself. That's why I like him so much. Except he had talent. That's the thing. When I die, they're not going to be publishing my crap. I can tell you that
Listen,
right now.
I'll publish all your crap.
Oh, really?
Aaron
I better
House
write some stuff quick.
All right, next up, Aaron. What if online Amiga magazine latest issue? So I just got done burying all the other Amiga magazines except for Amiga Addict.
I was wondering why you did
but
that.
Now I'm going to start digging them back out of the ground. So this is actually the reason why I like What If is because this is the magazine. I don't know if you remember about this, Aaron, but this is the magazine that is you can either download it and read it on your Amiga, or there's an option. On the screen there. See where it says. Scroll down and see where it says read on TAWS.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
So click on that. What this actually does is it loads an Amiga within your browser that you can read the magazine on.
Oh,
it's
man.
incredible.
This works for Doug. He'll be in business.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a magazine that is definitely more skewed towards the programming side, the utility side. They do have some game reviews, but it's definitely more of a creative person's magazine. But I just love the way that it's presented. I love the fact that, you can read it on a real Amiga or a virtual Amiga. All that stuff is super awesome. You can check it out at whatif, that is if spelled with 2 F's, .info.
Very clever. It is. I will say it's a good gimmick. I do like that. It is a pretty clever gimmick they've got there. And this is totally a freebie, right?
Absolutely.
There you
Absolutely
go.
free.
Freebie. There you go.
Now, Aaron, this next story is not directly Amiga related, but it's somewhat tangentially related because we cover so many development projects of games on here. As you might recall, last month I was over in the UK, and one of my flatmates during my stay was Tony Warner, who was the coder for Beneath the Steel Sky and Broken Sword and lots of other games like that. And so Tony has decided to start a new Substack, a new email newsletter called Game Worlds Weekly. And what this is it's basically a place where he will feature indie games in development at various stages of the development, talk to these developers, reach out to them, and there's little mini interviews that talk about where they are in the process. And I think this would be really interesting for a lot of us that don't have that programming talent, but like to see what's going on in the minds of these indie developers as they sort of, do this Sisyphean task of developing, bringing a new game up from the ether. So in this issue, the first issue, he covers The Silly Night, Blob It Push, Foolish Mortals, Whisper in the Mirror, and his own game that he's working on with Stu Cambridge, Urbex Warriors. So again, not directly Amiga related, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's a neat idea. And a lot of these games are retro inspired, if not completely retro. It might be of interest.
It's funny you should bring this up. I've been, me and Brenner have a special R. Sinclair Sunday where we're going to be talking about Head Over Heels for the next. And so I was doing some research. I found out that the graphics on it were done by Simon Butler, the original grumpy old man of retro gaming. So I went back and listened to a couple months of his Dinosaur Pie bit.
Oh, he's Dinosaur Pie.
He's the this is the guy.
Dinosaur Pie, but then I would figure it'd be like,
so
no, that's another guy.
So he talks about indie games quite a bit because he works on a lot of them. Obviously, he's very passionate about it, and so it's funny that he talks about the ones he likes and how they come up, and then lo and behold, here's this thing talking about a similar thing. So I might actually have to give this a read. Have you given this a read yet, Bode?
Not just a cursory glance. I plan on giving it a read this weekend.
Yeah, that might be a lot. That might be a lot of fun to check out, Bode. That's good stuff, man.
And finally, Aaron, the big story of the week. This is comes to us from ArtNet. Andy Warhol's computer portrait of Debbie Harry goes on sale for a cool $26 million. The portrait he created on the Amiga is finally going up on the auction block.
Yeah.
This includes the print itself, plus the signed disc, and two photographs flanking the disc of Mr. Warhol himself. Now, Aaron, I'm curious about this because I've always found Andy Warhol to be somewhat of an enigma. His star had kind of come and gone by the time I was sort of aware of him, and I've never really figured out what he brought to the world. I mean, I understand that he was an artist, but it seems like he transcended art and he became something more. So can you tell me more about him?
Well, it's not like I'm an Andy Warhol expert, but I can tell you what I know.
Okay.
He was one of these guys that I would put in that like king of all media type situation. He was involved with all sorts of artists, musicians. He was heavily involved and influential in stuff. I believe like stuff like the Velvet Underground and stuff. These guys were all hanging out. All right. Then he also did film. He did some horrible films. I mean, they were weird, but he did do them.
Okay.
And so he had a hand in that pie as well. Then, of course, the art scene, for connoisseurs that have the trained eye for that sort of area. Of course, that's where he earned his name. As a personality, he was popular because he was strange. He was unusual. He was great to film and interview because he was such an oddball guy. So you saw him everywhere. He was on the news. He'd be talking to Andy Warhol. He would show up everywhere because he knew everybody. So you would see a lot of him. And of course, here he is now. He sees a new medium come out. Now, am I saying he did this just to get his foot in the door on this new thing? Maybe. Was it for attention? Don't know. But I mean, it worked, and this is sort of what he did. He would slip in and out of these different genres and different forms, and it made him a guy that you could talk about for pretty much anything. He could show up for anything. You could have him on your talk show. He would be at openings and whatnot, and so he was just sort of a personality on top of his artistic abilities. That's my opinion.
So, as a man of all media, how would you compare Andy to somebody like Orson Welles?
Well, in some ways, they're similar. Really, in a lot of ways. Of course, Orson had his success real early, and then it just lingered for a long time. But he was another guy. He was well spoken. He was well liked by the right people. So you could have him on your shows. He was always great for an interview. He did magic. He was also involved in Broadway and Shakespearean theater and that sort of thing. So and of course he'd worked in radio. See, there were many different avenues you could use to discuss different topics with him. And then of course he was also a guy he'll do your commercial, because he was perpetually looking for money to fund stuff. He never had enough money. So yeah, I would say, and they were contemporaries, of course. So I would say, yeah, I could make that comparison. That's pretty good, Bode.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, $26 million, it can all be yours. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if the buyer is identified and who it is and what they plan on doing with the portrait. Undoubtedly the most expensive Amiga related object that will ever exist.
Yeah, there you go. I wanted to mention our good buddy, the Huck. Gary Hucker asked me to build some, and I think we're still good to go on this. So he has plugged a site. It's Amiga Live /Amiga which I've seen this popping up. This hashtag Amiga August. Have you seen this, Bo?
Well, I've heard Gary talk about it, but that's all I've seen.
This is a multiplayer gaming project. I'll put a link down in the show notes. This might be kind of fun. I guess everyone's got their, what was the one for Coco? Tandy. Septandy's one. Everyone's got a gimmick here. And so this is Gary. So I want to make sure I mention that to him while we were still doing the news. And then one more thing I want to mention, Bo. This is news to everyone that's cool. Look at this. If you're watching at home, I've turned this off a couple times. This is my glaive. I've got it. My good buddy Scoob made this glaive for me. If you're listening on the radio, picture the glaive from Crawl in all of its glory, held by me, held aloft, and available to toss to people. He 3D printed this boat. Isn't that nice? It's got the jewel and everything.
Man. Listen, when that thing arrived at your domicile, I figured the first thing you do is figure out some way to mount it directly above your bed.
Well, the thing is, I need it at the ready in case I have to, use it. I know how to use it, as the T-shirt says, Boat. So yeah, but I want to thank our good buddy Scoob for sending me that. He knows I love the glaive. He also sent me a little mini Crawl marquee back there to added bonus. So thank you very much. And also, I'm going to introduce my son now to Crawl. Now that he's seen the weapon, I think he's ready.
Oh man. Bro. All right. Got to tell us about how that goes. What do we got coming up next week on Amigos?
Let's find out. Oh, scary. It's burn time.
Burn time, eh? To me, this seems like, this looks, first of all, it looks dangerously German with that subtitle down there. Yeah. So we'll see how well we can get through this thing. I'm hoping it's in English. I wonder if it's another post-apocalyptic style game. I don't know anything about it. Do you know anything about this one?
I don't. I don't know anything about it. Maybe if I see it, I'll know, but I don't know anything about it. I used to watch a show called Burn Time. It was great, but I don't think they're related in any way. So it should be fun. I do like the skull. It's kind of cool looking. Is this what week is this? Is this strategy or action? Any idea what this?
I think that I believe this is a strategy game.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm making that up. I have no idea. So.
Well, we'll figure it out. And that'll be coming up next week. We're back, by the way. We're back to our normal schedule, I think, at least for more or less for a while, Bode.
Well, I mean, we'll be recording shows weekly for a long time. And that's the important thing. Thank you to everybody that's listened. Thank you to all of our patrons. If you like our show, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We will see you next week. And until then,
adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos Podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.